for coming to our drive-in performance of Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. This is our 9th Theater 3500 production. Theater 3500 is a neighborhood theater group in which all plays are directed, performed, and produced by neighborhood children. I'd like to thank Allison Kuzna, who adapted the script for us this year. Thank you also to Thrivent Financial, who sponsored this event. We are collecting donations for Feed My Starving Children, an organization that packages and ships meals to hungry children around the world. You can leave your free will donation in the collection bucket at the end of the driveway, or donate online using the link in the back of your playbill. Thank you all very much for your generosity. Our story begins in late 19th century England, where John, or Jack Worthing, is a gentleman who lives in the country, which he finds excessively boring. He has invented an imaginary brother named Earnest, who gets into all kinds of dreadful scrapes. Jack uses Earnest as an excuse to come up to town to escape the boredom of the country and to visit Gwendolyn, to whom he intends to propose. Gwendolyn's mother, Lady Bracknell, is not exactly fond of Jack and has very high expectations for her daughter. Lady Bracknell's nephew, Algernon, or LG Moncrief, is a very good friend of Jack's. LG has made up an imaginary friend named Bunbury, who lives in the country and is very ill. LG uses him as an excuse to go down to the country whenever he feels so inclined. When Jack reveals that he has a very pretty young ward named Cecily, to whom he takes care of, LG decides that he would very much like to meet this girl. In order to do so, he pretends to be Jack's imaginary brother, Earnest. But what happens when Jack and LG's deceptions are discovered?
Are those the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Does this look like a suitable display of tea and sandwiches for a marriage engagement, Lane?
I believe it is very suitable, sir. Although I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a very young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I am sure. That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ernest, my dear boy, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to have some slight refreshment around 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring. Hello. Why are these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I came up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you came up for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. But then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
Oh, I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
What? You have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Here, have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to eat it all. You act as if you are behaved to you act as if you are married to her already. But you are not married to her already. And I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
I don't give my consent.
Your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up this whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? Wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. Was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, it's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. But it makes no matter. For now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that this thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine! You've seen me with it 100 times! And you've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Yes. But this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you really want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, a charming old lady she is, too. Just give it back to me, Elton.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily? If she is your aunt. From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not so tall. Surely that is a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew and her uncle? I just can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
But you've always told me it was Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Aha! I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of this incomparable expression as soon as you're kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the care of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Yes, But why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother with the name of Earnest, who lives in Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. So when I come up to town, I am that Earnest, but when I'm in the country, I'm Jack. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come down to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid, in order that I may be able to go up to the country whenever I choose.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I think I shall kill Ernest. In fact, I think I shall kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your friend, Mr. Bunbury? With that invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Gwendolyn Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for development. And I intend to develop in many directions.
And now we'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go over our dinner plans for Saturday night.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give it the pleasure of dining with you. It is a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with them.
It is odd. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury decides whether he was going to live or to die.
I'll speak to him, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. Now let me take you inside, where you can find some sandwiches that don't require cucumbers.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Hey, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain they mean something else. And that always makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else. And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you do so.
Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl I have ever met. Since I met you.
I'm quite well aware of the fact. My idea has always been to love someone of the name Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me. mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibration. The only name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not completely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you have not proposed to me yet.
Oh. Well, may I propose now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly before that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Mr. Worthing, rise her from this posture. It is most indecent.
Mama, I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are not engaged. When you do become engaged, someone, I or your father, will inform you of the fact. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, Gwendolyn, wait for me in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mama.
How old are you, Mr. Worthing?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I am of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father?
I'm afraid I don't really know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents, but it would be nearer the truth to say my parents seem to have lost me. I don't really know who I am by birth. I was... Well, I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew found me.
And where did this gentleman find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a somewhat large, brown leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact. It was left in the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
To be born in a handbag, whether it has handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do?
I would advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I can possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room back home. I think that should surely satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom, and to form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwendolyn refused you? Oh, as far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. You don't think there is any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie? All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about you being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, by the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of a severe chill.
But I thought you said Miss Cecily was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest.
Oh, Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I am glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She's excessively pretty. She is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward, who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out. Without a doubt, Gwendolyn and Cecily will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they have called each other a lot of other things first.
You'll excuse me, dear Algie. Got to go catch my darling Gwendolyn before her beast of a mother drags her back to the city.
I should like to meet Cecily, and I think I know how I can. Jack has told his family back in the country that he has a younger brother called Earnest. If I pretended to be Earnest, no one would suspect me of being untruthful. And Jack couldn't expose me unless he wanted to admit to everyone that he made up his poor brother Earnest. This couldn't be more perfect.
Cecily. Surely such an absurd occupation as writing in a diary can be put off until a later time, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you.
I enjoy keeping a diary, Miss Prism. Oh, but how I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him. I'm sure you certainly would.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect over a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened.
To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are just well. Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I've not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache.
I think, dear doctor, I will have a stroll. I find I have a headache after all. And a walk may do it.
With pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He said he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Tell Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out.
Yes, miss.
You're my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily, and you are my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really that wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all along. That would be hypocrisy.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I've been very bad, in my own small way.
I don't think that you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
Oh, it is much pleasanter being here with you.
I know Jack wants to speak to you about your immigrating. He's going to send you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh. Well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid not. That's why I want you to reform me
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You look a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. Won't you come in?
Thank you. You're the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, Dr. Chaucer. You should get married. Believe me, I do not deserve some of your praise. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church is strictly against match. That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
Mr. Worthing, why are you dressed in this manner? Surely this garbed robe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother Earnest, he's dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my most sincere condolences. At least you have the consolation of knowing that you are the most generous and forgiving.
Poor Earnest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Mr. Worthing, I only beg of you to be not too bowed down by grief, for often the bitter trials of life are blessed in these times.
This seems to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on. Do come and change them. I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived just a few minutes ago.
Nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have treated you in the past, he is still your brother. You wouldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
I know. These are very joyful tidings. After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother Ernest, the dining room. I don't know what this all means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John! I have come down from town expressly to tell you how sorry I am for all the trouble that I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here is disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in evidence. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to live with and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
I must say, I think Jack's coldness to me is peculiarly painful.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It is great.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Surely, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You young scoundrel, Algy! You must get out of this place at once! I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I put Mr. Worthing's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
Merryman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
I have not been called back to town at all.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures, in the smallest degree. Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. It is perfectly disgraceful to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest.
You are not staying in my house as a guest or anything else. You have got to leave by the 4 or 5 train. I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bun-burring, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything.
Oh, I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order a dog cart for me. He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be, in every way, the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you'll allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions. Pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down her dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
You'll marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months? But how do we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I decided to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you in this very garden. It had always been a girl's dream of mine to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say that you cannot love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
My own dear, sweet, loving little darling. I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. If my name was Elgie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I feel I should never be able to give you my undivided attention.
I must see Jack at once to speak about this most important business. I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Pray, ask the lady to come out. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon.
Yes, miss.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here with my guardian. He, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. Earnest never mentioned to me that he is a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. However, the news inspires me. It is of unmixed delight.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Earnest? Yes. Oh, but it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother.
that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, it would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship of ours. Would it not?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I think there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. Ernest proposed to me exactly 6 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I'm so sorry to have any disappointment, but I'm afraid I have the fire play.
Well, since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Are you suggesting, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you?
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worley.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack?
Oh! Here's Ernest.
My own love!
A moment, Ernest. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Gwendolyn? Good heavens! Of course not! What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who's now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon. Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really Jack?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is Jack. It's been Jack for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There's just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
In Adeline. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. But to tell you quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother, and I don't have the slightest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you never had a brother of any kind?
No, not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear to yourself that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
Well, this ghastly state of affairs is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes! And a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens. As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I think your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I want you to be engaged to Gwendolyn. That is all. I love her.
Well, I wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house as anyone else would have seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear. If you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answers.
Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them.
Their explanations appear to be satisfactory.
Especially Mr. Worthing. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone seems to inspire me with absolute credulity.
Then, do you think we should forgive them?
Oh, yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? Task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly.
No. Your given names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our names? Is that all? But we can change them.
You would do that?
Of course. We hate our names. Anything for you. Darling!
Lady Bracknell!
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
You will do nothing of the kind. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
No. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed him this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
And what did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was found out. I mean, the doctors found out that Bunbury cannot live anymore. That is... Anyway, Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he has made up his mind to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
The number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average.
I have in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, vaccination, registration, confirmation, smallpox, and the measles, of both the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see. But perhaps too exciting for a young girl. I myself am not in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. As a matter of form, may I ask Mr. Worthing if Miss Cecily Cardew has any other fortune?
Oh, about 130,000 pounds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthy. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve time.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world.
Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon. To speak frankly, I'm not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's characters before marriage, I think, is never advisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cecily's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously, eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
The fact is, Lady Bracknell, that I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I am afraid there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, in his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in alienating the affections of my only ward. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he pretended to be my brother, even though he knew perfectly well from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, that I don't plan to ever have one, not even of any kind.
I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. For the moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
Well, I must say that what you propose is out of the question. Come, Gwendolyn.
Cecily, there you are. I have been looking for you.
Prism? Prism? Come here, Prism. Prism? Where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of a preambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, for the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the preambulator was found in a remote alley, but the baby was not there. Prism? Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I never can forgive myself, I placed the baby in the handbag. I left it in the cloak of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life. What do you make of all this, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag?
Yes, it seems to be mine. Here are my initials. It is a delight to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than that handbag. I was the baby you placed it in.
You?
Yes, mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am not your mother.
What?
There is some slight error. Here is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I am afraid the news I have to give you, Mr. Worthy, will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? I have a brother after all. Cecily, how could you have doubted, even for a moment, that I had a brother? Algy, you have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy. I did my best, though I was out of practice.
My own! But what is your given name, now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens. I'd quite forgotten about that fact. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affection.
Then the matter had best be cleared up at once. Algie, can't you recollect what our father's name was?
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
Then, Aunt Augusta, at the time when Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, naturally, you were named after your father, whose name was... Yes, I remember. Your father's name was Earnest John.
Ernest John? Gwendolyn, I always told you my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it really is Ernest. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to suddenly find out that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can.
I have now realized, for the first time in my life, the vital importance of being earnest.